Hi, everyone. So welcome to part 2 of the episode on consumer behavior, behavioral sciences, and the impact on marketing. I'm Harpreet. I head marketing for Kangaroo Group, and I welcome you guys to the initiative Marketing Demystified. I am joined by Vikesh Dhyani as my co-host. So Vikesh, it will be really nice if you can give some introduction.
Thanks, Harpreet. Hi, I'm Vikesh Jani, co-founder and publisher at Oakbridge Publishing and Taxo Online. I'm a publishing person. I work with companies like McGraw-Hill, Pearson, and LexisNexis across sales and marketing roles.
Sure, thank you. And in this part, again, we are joined by two eminent guests, Professor Arun and Suraj. It will be great if you can introduce yourselves. We'll start with Professor Arun.
So I'm Arun. I'm currently associated with Nursi Monji at their Mumbai campus in Vilepale. So I take courses on behavioral science and marketing for MBA and PhD programs at Nursi Monji. So I'm in my research along with my PhD students. I also work in behavioral science. This behavioral science is very close to my heart as a field.
Sure, thank you so much. Suraj, request your introduction as well.
Hi, I'm Suraj, and I'm a sales and marketing professional with almost 18 years of experience across liquor, paints, e-commerce, handloom, and now retail. So I am now currently associated with Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail.
Sure, thank you so much. So we will continue our discussion from part 1. Just for those who are not initiated into this, so in part 1 of this particular episode, we spoke about the concepts related to behavioral sciences, consumer behavior, how has it evolved, and what are the Indian schools doing to incorporate this upcoming field into their curriculum. We continue the discussion, and we will start with Professor Arun. So Professor Arun, can you enlighten us with what are the tools and techniques which are currently being used or practiced in this particular field? If I recollect from the part 1, you spoke about certain techniques like nudge intervention. You also gave us examples from various books which you have read or which you are preaching. So can you enlighten us with certain tools and techniques which you are practicing or which you teach?
Thank you. So when we talk about tools and technique, the first, as we discussed in the first half, tools and techniques for understanding consumer behavior is like we briefly discussed about. So data analytics is helping us a lot. We have like Amazon, say Netflix, they analyze even second-wise data of their consumers, what they are doing. Like this is how we now trying to capture data about every single consumer one at a time. Now, this is about how do we understand consumers. Earlier, maybe 2 decades back, we used to go to consumers, say, give them questionnaires. So we still do that. So to capture these, today, big data or this data automatically gets generated. So what people are doing. But these tools just let you know what is happening in the what consumers are doing. But to understand why they are doing it. Suppose they are behaving in a certain fashion, but why? What are the underlying motivations? Then behavioral science comes into picture. Then we need to go to behavioral scientists, like the people who work in neuroscience or people who work in behavioral economics or in social psychology. These people are the tools which helps us in understanding why it is happening. If consumers are getting influenced by reviews of Zomato or say of TripAdvisor, why? What are the underlying motivations? So behavioral science helps you in understanding why it is happening. Now, so what? So if you have understood what is happening and why it is happening, ultimately as a company, you want your products to sell more or you want certain items to be sold more. So this has to be, you want to influence a behavior, or the government also wants, like in a public policy, we apply this research for things like, how do you nudge people to say more electricity or wear helmets or wash their hands? These are the same knowledge is used by government in public policy to influence a behavior in these kind of the nudge intervention. In marketing, we nudge consumers to buy certain products more, or you want to sell your products more. Now, how do we apply these? What are the tools? Now, let's say in marketing, where do we want these behavioral interventions? Like somebody can say, I want my ads to go viral, or my ideas or my products should be talked about more. So we call this word of mouth. Now, word of mouth, there are frameworks available which say, so like there are very two interesting, so two psychologists. There is a Stanford professor called Chief Heath, and his PhD student now is John Berger, is a professor at Wharton. Both of them written two separate books called Made to Stick and Contagious. So they give you a framework. How do you apply this behavioral science to create good word of mouth or create content which so that your content has more probability of getting viral or say more talked about. Or another area where we talk about, let's say, how do you create good customer experiences? Customer experience, again, now Chief Heath again wrote an interesting book. It is called as Power of Moments, where how do you create very important, interesting moments for consumers? Or very recently in 2020, Alexander Chernev has written a fantastic book where he summarizes this. The book's title is Consumer Science. And how do you create fabulous customer? He's a professor at Kellogg's Business School, and he summarizes this entire behavioral science. And how do you apply this in creating brilliant experiences for the consumer? So these are the application in particular. So for every kind of application, you have different frameworks that has been developed. How do you apply this in the context of marketing, like whether it is creating, or let's say there is a framework called how do you create habit forming products, like say products like Instagram, Facebook, though their business model depends upon more and more people consume more and more content on Instagram. That's why they will get more ad revenue. So how do you hook people? So there is there is a book called Hooked, which just talks about how do you use behavioral science to hook consumers for your products. So behavioral science, the core knowledge which was created in 80s and 90s, in the last decade, the same knowledge has been not translated into specific tools for how do you do word of mouth, how do you use, say, in this kind, and then still these are very broader framework. Now, suppose you have a very specific problem, like this product is not, like say I was talking about the Savlon case study. Now, Savlon wanted soaps to be sold in the rural area, especially schools. The customer are not, say they just, even if they wash their hands, they just use water. Soap as a product is not used. So they developed this large intervention with one of the consultants, and it's there in the, so this consultancy firm has, say, published a report in 2022, which is there in the public. You can read the entire case study. And they have done it in India, in Mumbai itself. Their Mumbai team have done this intervention in rural India. So now the core knowledge is the customer habits don't change. Like say, I talked about there's something called a status quo bias, that consumers stick to what they're doing. If you want to change their habit, they still go to with their old habits. If you say expose them with advertisements, that soap is good, it does not change their behavior. So the nudge intervention design, so rather you use status quo as a bias to your advantage. That's a core philosophy of nudge. You don't go against the knowledge. So whatever the consumer, how the consumers behave, you use this to your advantage to influence the behavior. Now, status quo says you don't change your habit. If you just, even if you install those soap dispenser in the schools, they are not going to use it. So their habit is, suppose in the rural areas, they use chalk and slates. So chalk and slates, after chalk and slates, their hands get dirty. So they washed their hands only with the water. So what Savlon, with this behavioral intervention team, what they did, they created a new product where chalks and soap were mixed together in a single product. So they added soap granules inside the chalk. Now they are not telling you to use, they are doing what they are doing. So they are using the chalk. Now, whenever now they go and wash their hands, automatically the soap will say, give this lather. So this product was a very successful, very good intervention. It worked now. They got orders of lakhs of boxes across rural India. A lot of NGOs ordered these boxes. So these are some of the very good intervention. And there is a very interesting report. The same firm has given around 10 case studies. They have worked in the last 2-3 years, especially after COVID. And all these are there in the public domain, that So they across continents. So one intervention case study is about what they did in France, what they did in New York. So this case study I just picked because it happened in India. So there are similar examples which are available. So I think it's too big an area. So these are the few examples that I have.
So were they able to write with those chalks?
Yes. So they got lakhs of orders for, it's a very successful intervention.
So see, I think what I picked up from your discussion, and then I will go to Suraj, is like you said that there is a consumer way of acting. So for example, they do certain things in the way they do. We extract that and we absorb that data, we store that data, we do the data analysis, we formulate certain understanding of the consumer behavior out of this data analysis. And after we have formed the understanding of the consumer behavior, we apply that for the predictive analysis or for the predictive modeling of the marketing strategies.
Or we say in marketing research, we call it as A/B testing. Like A/B testing is very popular in online settings. So essentially it is A/B. We call, say in psychology, we call it as experimental design. So A/B testing as in, so you try this nudge intervention versus nothing. And suppose
control group.
Yes, exactly. So control group and experimental group. So that we call it as A/B testing is more language which is understood by people. So there is a control group, let's say, so you do this intervention on 1 lakh people. 50,000 will have this nudge intervention and 50,000 will not have this nudge intervention. Now the results suggest with this nudge intervention, the change in behavior in some cases is 70%, with 60%. So this has to be tested in your context with a control group, like how pharma industries do. Like if you have to test Covishield as a medicine, so there is a control group who get placebo or say water injection, and another 50% get Covishield. Then this intervention of Covishield, if it brings in result, it means Covishield as a medicine. So we borrow this from pharma and agriculture research. And the similarly nudge intervention like Covishield is given to the subjects or consumers. And if it works, then it becomes a powerful phenomena. And then you use this nudge intervention in multiple contexts.
Just last bit here, I remember when I was being taught in IIM, so there was, I don't remember the name of the professor, but they used to talk about, and we were taught about this, and you would relate to that, that in human brain, there is one part of the brain, which is like very stubborn. It's the elephant kind of brain, which is very stubborn, which is basically something which relies completely on your core beliefs, and belief systems don't change. So like you rightly said, that even if you install those soap dispensers, people will not use them because that is not a part of their belief system.
Correct. So this is inertia, because we are cognitive misers. We want to optimize our resource. We don't have unlimited cognitive resources. Willpower is also a limited resource. Attention is a limited resource. So we don't want to change our behavior. We stick to what they're doing. Any behavior change uses our cognitive resources. We try to conserve those resources and we stick to those habits. So what nudge as a philosophy says, you don't try to change it. Use it already what they're doing to your advantage. That's the core philosophy. The entire field is built on this philosophy that rather than going against those things, use it to your advantage and influence the behavior using the same thing.
There was a case study which we were taught, and I would like to mention it here. It is a very famous HUL case study. So villagers will not use the toothpaste or the tooth powder when it was initiated. So what the behavioral discussion was done at HUL was, they prefer to use that datun, that the neem ka wo jo bark aata hai, usko use karte the. So when they dug further, they found that all this was so like we brush our teeth in the bathroom, right? They will sit in a chopal under a tree, and it is like a social discussion which happens while they are using that. So when they understood that this is the behavior, they used it to their advantage, and they said that, okay, you don't use paste because paste obviously will need water. You can use that powder because powder while you are using, you don't need water, so you can still sit in that chopal and then do it. So absolutely, like this is the insight or the behavioral. I think the Suraj dropped off. So this is the behavioral intervention which even HUL used it to their advantage. Right. So if we were to continue this discussion while we wait for Suraj to join us back, how do you think industry benefit from this? Or how can industry and maybe the B school come together in this?
So I think Suraj has come back. So should you want to, or so should
Yeah.
we start with this intervention?
Yeah, so I think I'll go to Suraj. So Suraj, I was just going to ask Professor
Yeah.
Arun to talk about the second part, but maybe you can enlighten us, like he spoke about this behavioral change, which is done using this nudge technique. How in the experiences of whatever industries you have worked with, like you were talking about, there is habitual and then there is different kind of behavior. Can
Yeah.
you enlighten us with that?
So the way I'll structure it, Harpreet, is I'll first talk about the kind of behaviors, and then I'll give examples from real life and what interventions we need. And some of it might be nudge interventions, some of it might be psychological level interventions.
Okay.
So typically, if you say a consumer journey, there are 4 kinds of behaviors. Okay. So one will be a complex buying behavior. So complex buying behavior is when I mean, typically a paint or a car, which is a slightly high ticket item, it's a complex buying behavior because you will not buy it without doing subsequent a good research on the product that you're going to buy. Okay. And in this case, what happens, a real life example here would be how important is your omni-channel presence, or how important is your web presence, how important is your Wikipedia pages. Okay, as from a marketing standpoint, because the consumer is going to research, is your price catalogs available online? Okay, now these are nudge interventions. These are interventions because if a person finds it online and there is access to data that you have built across all your assets, very likely, it's very likely that you will come into the consideration set of a consumer who is into a complex buying behavior. Okay,
right.
So now moving on to the next kind of buying behavior, it's a we can call it a convenience or a dissonance reducing buying behavior. So what do I mean by a dissonance reducing? The biggest example would be, say, a Swiggy, or say Amazon, or say what furniture place like Pepperfry. So you are reducing dissonance in terms of time spent. You are reducing dissonance in terms of money that I have to spend. You are also giving a benefit of convenience. Okay. Now these behaviors are also these behaviors explain the rise of these companies or the e-commerce companies, because you're giving a dissonance reducing as a nudge intervention, and you are making their life simpler. At the same time, you're giving a price advantage. So that's a second kind of buying behaviors on which companies, or consumer behaviors on which companies are built. The third can be like what Professor Arun was saying, was habitual. Okay. Now habitual products are your grocery. Okay. So you are used to buying a certain kind of brand, you're used to buy a certain kind of habitual products day in, day out. So here, what is necessary is your brands that consumer love. They are there for it. I mean, you keep on continuing servicing these brands. Don't suddenly change a habitual behaving product to, even if you change, you add layers. Don't change the core product. So that's a big learning from habitual products, because there are brands which have gone down the drain by changing habitual products. You could see like Coke and Pepsi, when they did a caffeine Coke, I think Pepsi coffee version, or someone did some other version. Some of these products didn't work because the consumer is habituated to a certain kind of product. Colgate, for that matter, they will not change their core proposition. While they'll launch variants, their core will remain the same, because there's a lot of people who are habituated and their buying behavior is to buying the same thing again and again. So you will not make drastic changes in your core product proposition. So that's a habitual product. And the fourth is a variety seeking, and that is where companies like retail come in. So whenever I'm going to buy a cloth, or so for example, you are going to buy fashion for you need variety. You not like to see what you've seen in the last season. Okay, if you visit, say, Louis Philippe store, or say Jack and Jones store, and you visit in the month of February, and you see and you purchase something, and again you come back in the month of, say, August, and you find the same thing, it will not work well with you. Okay, you will say that they are very low on freshness. So what happens for these categories? For these categories, one, you need to keep on doing freshness, because a consumer behavior is that he's coming and looking for freshness compared to a habitual product where he's not looking for freshness. Yeah, he's looking for something new. That's one. Number two, what do you do when a consumer is looking for something new? One is you could give experiences in terms of products. The other thing, you can give experiences in terms of sensory, like the way your store looks like, the way your lighting is, the way your music is, the way your store manager greets. These are experiences again which can add to the variety seeking behaviors. Okay, why do companies do red carpet events in the store? Why do companies do? Because they have a set of, you will see these are industries that do these red carpet events, or they, or say a wine and cheese event. You will see these are industries who want variety seeking people to come in. Liquor, alcohol, it's a variety seeking, it's a habitual product, but at the same time it's a variety seeking product. Okay, it transcends two ends, because you are looking for slightly more smoother scotch, you are looking for slightly even better smoky flavors, so you are looking for that. So that's why they conduct wine and cheese events, because they want to have a variety seeking consumer come and give them a sensory experience. Fashion retail is another example. So in terms of behaviors across the pattern which I spoke about, starting from a complex to a dissonance reducing to a habitual and to a variety seeking, all four of them are based on deep understanding of consumer psychologies or motivations that drive consumers. And your marketing strategies have to be accordingly fine-tuned. Okay. In first case, I mean, search becomes a very important marketing strategy for complex buying behavior. For dissonance reducing, speed becomes a very competitive marketing strategy. Or discounts becomes a very competitive marketing strategy. A 30-minute delivery promise becomes a very competitive marketing strategy for a dissonance reducing, or an event. Great India Amazon Festival becomes a very important marketing strategy for dissonance reducing behaviors. For habitual, you just need to keep on giving the same products at the same price, or you need to make sure that the product is authentic. You can buy from, say, a website also. So those are things become very important. And for variety seeking, as I said, red carpet event become very important. Your freshness becomes very important. So all of this is based on consumer understanding and consumer behavior as the root cause to drive such adoption.
Right. And I think some very interesting examples, like you said, that some people will buy because they are habituated to something. Some people will buy because of convenience. Some people will buy because they want to be there. They want it as a social proof. Some people will buy because of the time. Some people will buy because of convenience. Some people will buy. So it's a very deep rooted connection with, I think, what brands have done earlier was maybe being not aware of or doing it out of reflex. And now with the advent of sciences, and now with the advent of what the actual technology is behind, it is becoming more and more easier for brands to correlate and use that particular behavior to their advantage. So I think just one last question to Professor Arun and then to Suraj is how industry can collaborate. Like you said that these courses have started, how industry can collaborate with the B schools for this particular aspect to be built in, both for the advantage of consumers as well as for the brands alike.
So there are 2-3 things that we can do. Like at NM, we get around every year around 100 companies, more than 100 companies come with live problems. Like, and students are very cheap resources. If you go to AC Nielsen, it's going to charge you a lot of money. Students, out of the motivation, they will put this live project on their CV. So these companies approach with a lot of corporate live cases. Like Asian Paints is coming for almost 10 years. They are building this customer experience centers. They are setting up stores. So this is one good area. Especially some companies come up with very behavioral related, like say, I recently remember, which I worked with some student groups, the Colgate, Amazon came up with some problems which had they wanted some nudge interventions to be given for those kind of problems. So one area which can be easily be done, which is already happening, and especially all the tier 1 B schools, the companies come up, if they're facing a live problem, they come up every year and say, float these problems in these B schools. And sometimes, like say, some of the solutions that given by the students, like say for ITC comes every year, and some our college students won this competition, and IIT actually introduced this product. Sometimes you get good solutions from students because students have different motivations. They want, and almost they're doing this for free for the companies. That's one area where. Now, second area is like say now as a professor, I'm working in behavioral science. I have a lot of motivation because our growth depends upon if we publish research papers like on these interventions. So I work in the area of nudging and behavioral science. So if I want to grow in this field, I need to publish research where I apply, like say I worked on a solution of finding a solution to choice overload, as I said, I wanted to build a choice architecture. So I approached these companies that please allow us to conduct this experiment live to your consumers. So academics also can approach industry, or another area is like, so there are a lot of global examples like Robert Cialdini, who wrote this book Influence, where we were talking about social proof. He developed this. Now, two Harvard graduates created this company called O-Power. Now, it was a startup earlier. Now Oracle owns this company. This company, the core job is to apply this behavioral science intervention. So they hired Robert Cialdini as a chief scientist. He developed these concepts. Now they wanted to apply these concepts to influence the behavior. So he worked there. He's a professor at Arizona State University. He worked for 2-3 years as a chief scientist to build this. So the entire that's another level of collaboration. And there are many global examples, like say John Berger, Wharton professor, works with a lot of companies to do these behavioral intervention. Like he did one study for New York Times to see what kind of content goes viral. So there is a lot of motivation for academics also to write. Now he wrote this paper in Journal of Marketing Research, one of the most prestigious journal in marketing research. That's his personal motivation for his growth, but it ended up, say, doing this research for New York Times. So this is the two, and another, obviously, because students are going to be the managers later on. So the B schools has to be strongly built in this in their curriculum, so that at least they are sensitized. So when they go into the future, they one another possibility, and I'd say I was very surprised. There is a lot of interest in managers to learn all these things. So now IIM Ahmedabad runs an MDP program called neuroscience and all this. So we also started some MDP program, and we conducted around for 7-8 companies, and there is an interest in managers also to learn these behavioral science and neuromarketing. So I thought neuromarketing and these kind of things will be very technical. Managers may not be interested. So it's a full-fledged course residential program that IIM Ahmedabad runs. But here also at NM also we tried. We at least got say 4-5 clients for topics like neuromarketing, behavioral science, choice architecture. So we conducted. So that's the 2-3 ways we can do collaboration with the industry.
Sure.
And
Suraj, would you like
I would
to
just add on, I think very rightly pointed out by Professor Arun. So one of the biggest collaborations can be in live projects. Okay. So I'll tell you what does industry look at? Industry, we need people or we need students who come to us and who primarily help us understand a consumer better and research them more in terms of what do they want, what are the underlying needs, benefits. Because see, one of the things of output, so we all spoke about inputs, but what is the output? At the end of the day, there is a product, and you have to think about what the product is offering, and you have to take it to the consumer. Now, what the product is offering is based on behavior. Okay. Now, or based on the study of the behavior of how consumers behave, and thus I create a product. Now, that product can be, say, a benefit-based product. Okay, benefit-based need. Example, like in paints, we launched a silicon-based paint. A silicon goes into the paint, which will repel water. So obviously, your house will look very resplendent. Okay, that is one way of looking at it. But again, when you do, and when we collaborate with, like students of prof, and see what can be other benefits. Another benefit that can come across is, when a house is getting painted, you don't like the smell. So can no smell be a benefit that can be given to a consumer? And all things can come when we collaborate with industries to come together and help drive research better. Okay. So that is one lens of looking at it. The other lens of looking at, can your product take an occasion peg? Okay. Are there any occasions which a product can ride on? Okay. And very beautifully, that one of the brands that I've done is Cadbury's. Okay. Like kuch meetha ho jaye. Okay. So every time you feel like celebrating a moment, you have a Cadbury product. Okay. Now the behavior is, whenever kuch meetha ho jaye is the sentiment. Whenever a person is happy, he wants to have a sweet or wants to give a sweet. But Cadbury taking that means that there is a behavior which I am exhibiting, but no one has spoken about it. Can I take it forward? So here, maybe a collaboration in a research field where we go deep into research, deep into live projects, which students will have the bandwidth to get us what are the occasions, whether by studying consumers or whether through spending time with them through ethno studies. That is where I think a real collaboration can happen between students and industry going forward, wherein we go much more deeper into either benefits, either occasion, either convenience. What could be the need state which has not been tapped, or what could be the behavioral state which has not been tapped, which we can take and start talking about. Okay. Swiggy was not tagged. I mean, Swiggy, they didn't know that when Swiggy came up, food, food has been existing for so many years. But the fact that food delivered to you in 15-20 minutes can be a big thing was never discovered 15-20 years back, right? So there are behaviors which are existing, but then technology comes and cracks it along with deep consumer insights.
Sure. I think so. Behavior is a much vaster science, and using that behavior, we understand insights, and then insights is something which goes on building the product, improvising the product. It goes on innovation. So, for example, 2 examples which you gave, and that is how that these 2 concepts can be applied for the advantage of both the consumers and the brands. So, I will sum up the discussion. I will request Professor Arun to give those names of the books once again, which can be very helpful for the listeners. Some of the books which you suggested.
So the person who built this entire field is Daniel Kahneman. It's an international best-selling book, is called Thinking Fast and Slow. So where he summarizes his 30, 40, 50 years of research, for which he eventually won a Nobel Prize. Then Richard Thaler wrote this book called Nudge. And Daniel Kahneman last year wrote this book where he talks more about applications of this, is Noise. It is published in 2021. This Chernow wrote a book called Consumer Science, where he summarizes the entire research, especially how do you create fabulous customer experience using behavioral insights. And it is just published a few months back. Your Dan Ariely works extensively in this area. He wrote a very popular book called Predictably Irrational. Hooked is a book which talks about how do you create habit forming products. Then if somebody is interested in word of mouth, that what are the dynamics, how do you engineer word of mouth, is Made to Stick and your Contagious are 2 good books. So let's say Malcolm Gladwell initially started the very old book called Tipping Point. So but actual frameworks were built in Contagious and Made to Stick. But the broader area that somebody can start with Tipping Point, which is an old book. Now, these are some books which I remember offline. Now I recall many other books. So I think this is enough. I think
this is enough, and maybe when you will share when this article goes or this episode goes live, then if you want to recommend, then while you are sharing it from your handle, you can write more books which you would want that listeners can benefit from.
Sure.
Yeah, and closer home, I think Rama Bijapurkar wrote one book. We are
yes.
like.
Correct.
Yeah.
So for Indian consumers, he wrote a book.
Yeah, correct. So culturally more contextual.
Sure. Thank you so much for this wonderful session, and we will inform you when it goes live. Let me just start the recording first. Thank you for watching part 2 of this episode. In this part, we looked at what are the practical examples of application of behavioral sciences. We looked at different buying behaviors, complex buying behavior, convenience buying behavior, socially led buying behavior, and we also looked at how different institutes are taking steps to formulate a course in behavioral sciences. NIMS is one of them. Although it's a smaller course of 30 hours, but they do explore different aspects of behavioral sciences and how that can be applied to marketing to drive product adoption. Thank you for watching, and in case you liked this part, do watch part 1. I have mentioned the link of part 1 in the um in the LinkedIn copy. And in case you like both the episodes, then please do like, share, and comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Marketing Demystified, and do stay tuned in. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.